Well, if you are new or you're visiting, my name is Matt and I get the joy of being the priest of this beautiful community. And Unlimited, we are a multi-generational family that wants to do two things really beautifully. We want to go all out as a community, as a family for our unreached youth in our beautiful city. And there's a few reasons for that. There are a couple of stats that really drive us. The first is they reckon that 86% of people in the church join the church before the age of 25. And so we want to be part of that movement, helping people who are under 25, beautifully see who Jesus is in a way that they wouldn't normally. And secondly, they reckon that about 3% of 16 to 24-year-olds are in church right now. If that number drops by 0.3 of a percentage to 2.7, they will technically be an unreached people group, and basically not on our watch is our motto, right? And so we want to do every single thing possible to enable that beautiful generation to see who Jesus really is and to wonderfully come to know him and find him and love him. And so that's the first thing. We want to be this multi-generational family going all out for our unreached youth and city. Secondly, we want to see miracles everywhere. Like, I want us to be the miracle people in the middle of the city where when someone says, hey, I'm feeling sick, or hey, this is not going my way, or hey, I've got a bad, diagnosis, they're like, who do I reach for? And like, we are kind of the first point. And they're like, I don't believe, I wonder if you have a conversation like I have quite a lot, which is like, I don't believe in your God, but would you ask him to heal me? Or would you ask him to change things about my life? Or would you ask him, I seem to have this conversation and say, we want to be this miracle people in the middle of the city. We are, as a church, we're in the middle of a series looking at the book of Revelation, and I'm just slightly pulling us out for this week to look at the source of love. But I think it ties in. This Revelation, this book, right at the very, very end of the Bible, the last book, is this beautiful moment where this guy called John, who's one of Jesus' closest friends, gets taken up into heaven. And he sees Jesus sat on this beautiful throne. And he sees what it will be when time is wrapped up. And there is no more suffering or death, or there's no more lack of peace, or there's no more disease, there's no more cancer, there's no more, health problems. And he sees this beautiful vision of what will be when humanity gets drawn in. And really, it's this opportunity to bring hope in hard times. Because the church is about to face severe persecution. The church is about to be really genuinely suffer. And so he gets this vision to say, look, there is hope. There is hope. It may not look like it, but there is hope in hard times. And I wonder whether relationships often need that hope. Because so often they feel like they're quite hard work, don't they? Particularly if you're married to me, it's hard work. We need hope in hard times. And in a week where we're bombarded with Valentine's Day messages and we're bombarded with supermarket promotions and adverts and all the rest of it, I want to go back to a real source of love that will take us through. An inspiration for perhaps our own love, or a reason for our longing for a love that we're not seeming to find. And I want us to remind each other that there is a greater intimacy on offer with God than we can ever find with each other or romantically. There's a guy called David Bennett. He's now Dr. David Bennett. And I knew him before he was Dr. David Bennett. I knew him as David. And he's an amazing theologian. And he's a celibate guy. In other words, he doesn't think that he's going to get married. And I remember saying to him, hey, David, how do you do it? How does it work? How do you go for the rest of your life, committing your life to not being in a relationship? How do you do that? For me, just being really vulnerable and honest, that I would feel so lost and lonely. And I said to him, how do you do this? And he said to me this thing that, knocked me for six. It shouldn't have done, but you might have heard me say this before. He said to me, hey, Matt, the intimacy that I have with God is so much greater than the intimacy that you have with Laura. In other words, just because you are being physically intimate with each other and you share most of your lives, there is so much more on offer from God. He said, I feel like I am lacking nothing because of the intimacy that God brings. It knocked me for six, and I was like, gosh, So this talk is for my married friends, my single friends, my dating friends, my just dumped friends, my, going through a rocky relationship kind of friends, my friends that are divorced and struggling friends, my friends that are married with a dog and kids and happy, kind of friends. This is for my friends who are doing normal life. And I want to remind you of this unbeatable love that we have. I want to look at Matthew 3. And there's this beautiful bit where Jesus is baptized. Where Jesus is, it says this. Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. John is his cousin and is a beautiful guy. But John tried to deter him, saying, I'm to be baptized by you, and you come to me. Jesus replied, let it be so now. It is proper for us to do this, to fulfill all righteousness. Righteousness basically means like right relationship with. Then John consented. As soon as Jesus came up out of the water, at that moment, heaven was open. He saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, this is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. This is my Son, whom I love. With whom I'm well pleased. This is not on the screen, but the next verse said, then Jesus was led into the desert to be tempted by the devil for 40 days. Interesting. This is my Son whom I love. I want to basically say, in essence, today, we will face hard times. We'll face challenging relationships. Life will not be easy. But there is this beautiful love that is on offer. Yeah, I want you to hear from your priest, before anything else, that you are loved. You are loved in abundance. You are loved beyond measure. You know, the fascinating thing to me is like one of the really only recorded times that we hear the tangible, voice of God, literally the booming voice of God. What does he do? He declares his love. He speaks it out. I'm fascinated by this. In a world that it seems obsessed with like M&S dine-ins and jewelry shop spikes this week and lingerie sales go up this week, I want to just go to a love that doesn't reek of desperation, but a godly love, the greatest love that we can ever experience, where there is nothing you can do to earn it or deserve it or gain more of it or take more love. There's nothing you can do to become more or less attractive to God. He loves you because he loves you. And I'm going to be honest, I think we struggle with it. I think we struggle with it because there is nothing we can do to really earn more of it. And we work ourselves, and we have to come back and just receive it. And I think this struggle with it is because we know how the world works, right? Like, if you behave like a jerk, people treat you like a jerk, right? If you behave like a moron, people treat you like a moron. And we take that view with God. Like, we know, I think, so many of the times that we know where God is calling us to. We know our own battles. We know our own flaws. We know our own weaknesses. We know what we struggle with. And we wrap that up and say, God, I can't be lovable. I can't be lovable. I struggle to know that I am loved because. And we bring this big because before God. Yeah, that's not how he works. He loves you because he loves you. The beautiful thing about this verse is this is way before Jesus has done anything. Jesus hasn't healed the sick. He hasn't, been obedient. He hasn't gone into the desert. He hasn't, done the stuff that we know he will do. This is before anything public. There's this booming voice. This is my Son, whom I love. And I guess if you've been in church a little while, you'll be like, yeah, Matt, I know this. I know this. Thank you so much. Like, good reminder. Thanks. Tick the box. Great. I heard it before. Let's move on to something a bit more deep and theological, perhaps. Or maybe if you're new to church, you might roll your eyes at me and be like, this is cringe. Can we get on to something a bit more logical, like proving God really exists? But actually, this, I think, is the most important thing. This is the foundation. This is where we start everything from. I heard a guy called Rick Warren, who's a big American pastor. And I heard him speak at the Albert Hall. And he said this: it all starts with love. It all starts with love. Before we do anything else, before we can embark on anything else, we need to know and feel the love of God. We need to know and feel the love of God. Like it can't just be this sort of vague theological sentiment or this vague kind of thing that we live by. You have to know it and feel it. It starts with love. Over the last few years, I've talked about this renewal of all things, this revelation vision of God wrapping up the world and coming back, his grand plan for creation. Today, what is the landmark reason he does that? It's because he loves us. It's because he loves us. The mission of Jesus, I think, was to bring us to right reconciliation, right relationship with the Father. Jesus came to bring us back into the Father's presence. His mission was to take our death and our sin and our soul's disease and to die with it, that we may be accepted by God, because he sees that as just punishment for the wrongdoing of humanity. That daily we can start over again, that daily we can come back to God and say, God, I've got this wrong, forgive me. And we can wholeheartedly do life again with God. So Jesus' purpose, I think, is to deliver us into the Father's presence. Therefore, I think the purpose of the Father is, once we've been delivered into his presence, is to love. It's to love. To provide the best possible framework for humanity to live in, to live our best lives in optimal, thriving conditions. How does that work? Through love. This is not some kind of soppy kind of love that leaves you a sticky, like lip gloss kind of kiss you might get from your auntie, like you put away as it comes in. It's the kind of love that insists that there is a highway of life, an abundance of creativity, a joy that is unending, a peace that goes beyond what we could ever understand, wisdom greater than all of the minds of humanity put together, a God who creates, a God who loves, a God who balances the universe, every molecule and atom and gas to the exact right amount, a God who creates the beautiful heavens and earth and sees their beauty, who sustains life abundantly and yet calls humanity the jewel in the crown. Why? Because he loves us. Because he loves us. How does God, the Father, choose to identify? Well, it's as this heavenly Father. Verses 16 to 17 says this: as soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened. He saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him, and a voice from heaven saying, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." He could have just boomed down from heaven, this guy knows what he's doing, do it. He's God, he can say that. He can be like, follow that man, obey him. He does he? What does he say? He says, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." This is my Son. He does something remarkable. He gently sends his Spirit to fall and to descend, and then to align himself, to declare his alliance with humanity. This is my Son whom I love. I want to break out here in the middle of our talk, and I want to ask the question: have you felt the love of God? Have you felt the love of God? And perhaps if you're new to this space, if you're new to faith, you might ask, what would that look like? What would it look like for you to feel that love of God? And perhaps the follow-up question could be what can you do to place yourself in a place where you can feel that love more often? I want to start where we left off, that beautiful one line. This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Just think about this moment for Jesus. I know that you guys are under pressure to deliver in the workplace, under pressure to get targets, under pressure for payroll, under pressure to in classrooms, under pressure with people, exam pressure, targets to meet. Let alone finding the right one to marry, and working out what it looks like to do life as family, and finding friends, and having people to provide for. It's pressure, isn't it? But just imagine the pressure that Jesus is under. He has to live a perfect life. He has to be the perfect atoning sacrifice for all of humanity. Think about the pressure upon him to live this perfect life. How does he do it? How does he live it? How does he face the crucifixion? How does he face the near stonings, the danger, the disgrace? Well, I think he can only do it because he physically feels the pleasure of God upon him. Physically feels it. You know, how does Jesus go through with Gethsemane? There's this garden, there's this moment before he's about to be crucified, and he is so scared of this crucifixion that he is sweating drops of blood. That's what happens if your body's under extreme pressure. How does he do it? Well, he knows and he feels the pleasure of God upon him. It's not just knowledge. It's not just theory. It's not just sort of academic speak, but he knows it, I think. You know, I wonder whether our problem so often is that we don't feel that lovable. Like we don't feel that, you know, like we know ourselves, right? You know, we do stuff, we think stuff, we say stuff that we know damages our relationships with Jesus and our humanity. We know our own brokenness, and we struggle to find ourselves as truly, truly lovable in that kind of way. You know, let alone kind of sense the love of God sometimes. And for so many people, I think, you know, like we've got to find a way of moving from academic theory, head knowledge, to knowing it in our hearts. Like genuinely sitting and being present with God and feeling, like really feeling the love of God. Just imagine how that would change your world. Imagine how that would change the way you walked into every meeting, every classroom, every, you know, like moment where your 5-year-old wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning because they want a hot chocolate or whatever it is. You know, like how would that change who you are? Every appointment, every phone call that comes in. Like how would that change your moment by moment, day by day? You know, I've said it for a little while, but I want this community to be defined by love. I want to build a family that doesn't always agree. They see things differently, but can unite around a love that goes beyond trying to be right, a love that goes beyond trying to like force our opinions on each other, but a love that sees each other as uniquely and beautifully made and loves from the deepest depths of our being, because we know that is true for us because we've experienced it through God. You know, a love that can build and can navigate the tensions of theological, of ethical, of political, of economic, different in a world that seems to be polarized in it. You know, I really believe that will change who we are. I remember times growing up with my parents where I did some pretty dumb things and upset them, whether it be like, you know, like bottling someone else in my youth group and get thrown out church, or whether it be, you know, like the time that the head teacher would call my mum for the second time in that day, or whether it be, yeah, like the fact that I crashed my mum's car 3 times, or whether it be the fact that I hit my brother with a golf club a number of times. Yeah, like I remember getting it really, really, really wrong. Like getting it really, really, really wrong. But I remember feeling loved. And I took for granted the fact that I am their son and that nothing could steal their love from me. I felt it. I knew it was true. The same is true with us and God. We are loved beyond measure. No matter what you do, no matter where you've been, no matter the opinions of yourself you've formed, no matter the habits that you struggle with, you are loved. And that love should change the way that you do life. That love should impact the knowledge of how you're going to be treated by the divine. That love should show God's intent in your life. That love should inflate your soul like oxygen inflates your lungs. That love is active and it actively hunts down darkness in your life. It gives life where there is disorder. It brings love where there are doubts. It's a love that when welcomed wraps itself around the pain of human experience and suffering in order to bring life and truth and goodness. It's a love that reconstructs the way that we live and gives us a peace that is phenomenal and goes beyond understanding. There's this great pastor in SoCal, you know, like in the southern part of California, suffering for the gospel, obviously, on the beach, you know, and he was at a conference that some of my friends were at a few months ago. And he said this thing that they were all talking about. He said, if I don't receive what I need from God, I'll try and find it elsewhere that day. Yeah, if I don't sit and wait on God and say, Lord, I need your love, I need your care, I need your peace, I need your hope, and he doesn't sit there and wait and receives it from God, he'll look elsewhere and just get a shoddy version, just get a corrupted version. Feeling the love of God, I think, is a basic human necessity. It's why you can have all the wealth in the world. You can build the most successful careers. You can be married to the person of your dreams. You can see the most beautiful places that there are to offer. You can have the most impressive connections and still be miserable. Because your soul needs to know and feel the love of God. Again, come back to that beautiful verse. Matthew 3:17, a voice from heaven said, this is my son whom I love, with him I am well pleased. This is what God wants to say about you each and every day. You are my son, you are my daughter, and I love you. I love you. I remember when we joined Unlimited 2 years ago, and we were trying to work out lights and stuff around here, and we met in the evening then, and we were here till about 11 o'clock at night on Sunday night with some of the guys, and trying to work out how to look and feel and all that kind of stuff. And we looked at the clock and we're like, gosh, it is dinner time. 11 o'clock, we found the most nutritional thing that was open, McDonald's, and so we went to McDonald's, and one of the guys actually had the big box of chicken nuggets, and I was quite impressed he managed to finish them. But we were there, and these teenagers came into the back. And I've told this story before. It was early days we were here. And they were talking about, one of them was a Satanist. One of them was a local, was dealing some pretty serious stuff. One of them was just being arrested, even though he was 14. And it was all a bit of a mess. They were talking about who they're going to jump and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I turned around and just said to them, guys, I can't let you just continue this conversation. Can I just tell you that you are loved? Can I tell you why you're loved? And he looked at me and said, why do you even care? I'll never forget, why do you even care? And I got to say, I care because I think I'm loved deeply, and I think I'm called to show that love to you guys. And the guy, they were pretty kind, actually. They listened for a little bit, and then they told me to jog on. And but I had this moment where, as I said, I am loved, and I think you are loved. But I'll never forget the look in his eyes. Just disbelief. I am convinced that we were created for a reason, and that reason was not to be this social experiment to see what would happen to humanity if we were left to our own devices. But I think we were called and made to be known and loved. Some theologians tried to work out what the point of humanity is. Taken from Psalm 145, they said this: the chief end of man, in other words, the most important thing about mankind, is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. You and I were called to enjoy God. The tragedy is the Christian faith today is seen as old, outdated religion, but the truth is it's about a God who wants to know us and love us, who has our back, and to call us to be this beautiful voice in the world around us that says we are loved. We are loved. So where do I land? Where do I kind of conclude this talk? Well, with Nicholas Sparks, of course. I want to remember, love is like the wind. Love is like the wind. You can't see it, but you can feel it. My dream is that each and every day you would sit and just wait and say, God, I need your love. And you might not see it, but you would definitely feel it. You might not be able to kind of have a moment where you're saying this is the exact point in my morning, but you'd be able to know the difference that it has made. I think that God wants to relate to us as a father who loves. He wants to proclaim his acceptance and love and forgiveness over us. A father who wants you to experience the difference it makes being known and loved by him. And good day and bad, come what may, to see the difference that love makes. Because you hear his voice. You are my son and my daughter whom I love. With you I am well pleased. And so can we pray? Would you stand if you're able? And we're going to pray together.